Welcome back to our amazing course. Today we will complete what we have left off on the last session, which is creating the models. Now we have to create the application DbContext. But before we proceed, there is two teeny things we have to mention. Many thanks to our friend Des for mentioning that I have forgot in the tickets in the ticket class that I have forgot to initialize the created on with the default value. So not UTC now, and also I forgot the property in the job application. So let's add it here. I will call it application date, like that. And also I will initialize that here, like this. I'll type application date equals date time dot UTC now. So that's great. I think right now we are done from the models. We can create the application DbContext. Okay, so here I will create a new folder. I will call that folder data, and within that folder I will create a new class. I will call it application DbContext. Okay, which is basically the communication layer between the application and the database. It should be inherited from DbContext provided by the entity framework, like that. So that's great. Here we should have a constructor, and within the constructor of our class going to take a DbContext options instance of type application DbContext, call it options, and then we should pass these options to the base controller, to the base class, options. Basically those options going to contain the, for example, use SQL Server with the connection string and this stuff. We are going to initialize and configure this in the startup.cs for the ASP.NET Core project, but yeah, for now this is what we want. Now here we should create the property that's gonna represent the tables, which are of types DbSet. So we should create a DbSet property for each class we have here. So let's start by event. Okay, events get set. Event image. We have event tag. We have the likes, and the ticket. We have the user profile. And at the end we have the wishlist event. Wishlist events, like that. So basically those are our DbSet properties that each one like represent the table of the database, but in the C# or in the programming side of the project. Now at the end we still have only one thing. We should configure the relationship between those tables in general, because for example the user profile has a list of events, and each event has a list of event tags and event images. So in this case, what's going to happen is if we remove a user profile suddenly from the database, so by default it's going to be the action is going to be cascading, which means the user profile is going, when we delete the user profile, all the events related to that user profile is going to be deleted, and also in that case the tags that are related to that event is going to also be deleted. So this basically a decision based on business decision, let's say, but in many cases it's not that good, because it's going to lead to a big loss of data if anything happening. This is number one. And number two, sometimes it's not efficient enough, especially when you have multiple relationships. So you'll be in a loop that's going to lead to some mistakes. So entity framework will arise an exception and say, hey, there is a reference for some tables with themselves. So if you delete someone, it's unable to delete another entity because it's based on another one. So it's going to be a little messy. So the best way is to set, to make no action whenever you delete some. For example, when you delete a user profile, what's going to happen to the event table? Basically, we will say, okay, do nothing, and the deleted process is going to be handled by our side. So for example, when we want, let's say, the user wants to delete an event, we won't let the system goes alone and delete the event image and event tags, for example, and all the like and user profiles. We will handle this from our side because maybe we can use another procedure, like for example, with an event, we can add a flag or a Boolean property called isDeleted, and basically we can just turn this to false. So in this case, we still own the data, but it's not going to be served to the users anymore. This is one of the options. But yeah, from my side, at least, I prefer to have the control over the deleted process and not setting it to cascade, which is the default procedure. So in this case, you have more control over the data and the database. So to do this, there is a function called onModelCreating, like that. And here we can use the Fluent API to control that database. We have used before those here, we call this attributes, to also control the database, how it's going to look like. For example, this name is going to be, has 40 character length, and it's going to be not null. We can also control that, but from here using the Fluent API. So, for example, let's start with the user profile table. I can say model builder dot entity user profile. Okay, so here I can say has many, which means the user profile has many from a specific properties, which is with B property. Dot events, has many events, but within the events there is with one. So the user profile has many events while the event has only one user profile, which is the navigation property called user profile here. And at the end we can say on delete behavior is going to be no action. So basically just when I delete, don't do anything. Okay, also using the Fluent API, you can do everything you want. For example, let's do a little example here. For example, model builder dot entity user profile dot, as you can see, property. You can say has key to define the primary key. You can have a lot of things. Basically, set the base type if there is any inheritance in the database tables, or yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of properties. To table, to query, to table, to for example, you have a database and the table of the database you want to call it something else, like tbl underscore user profiles, for example, and here it's going to be called user profile. So you can use the to table to control the name of the table in the database. Yeah, you have a lot of functions. That is not the core topic of this course to talk about, but yeah, you can control also the things from here. But I only use it just to control the relationship between the tables. Also, user profile has many, let's say b.wishlist events, and with one b.user profile on delete no action, like that. I'll copy it. Also, it's going to be for likes. And if we go to the user profile, we will see here we have list of events, tickets, wish list, and so we still have the tickets, sent applications, and received applications. Okay, I will paste it here also again, but it's going to be for tickets now. and it should also be for sent applications. So the sent applications is, if you remember, in the job application we have two relationships with the user profile: the organizer ID and the applied user ID. So the sent, the user that sent the job application is going to be the applied user. So basically, applied user like that, and the send is going to be the received application is going to be related. Received application is going to be with the organizer like that, because we have said that the user profile has a many-to-many relationship with itself by the table job application, because the user profile can send multiple job applications to also another user profile, but the difference is by the type of that user, whether it's an organizer or a normal user. So like this, we are done from the user profile table. We can move to the events table. Let's say model builder dot entity event has many again dot event tags dot with one dot on delete okay, and also for event has many p dot event images with one okay. Still have the likes as well. Sorry. Okay, and the job application, the ticket, we still have the tickets. Okay, tickets, event, no action. So in this case, I think we are done from managing those relationships between those tables, and that's it. It's pretty easy. Let's just again make a very quick recap of what we have done in this session. Basically, we have created an application DbContext, which in turn inherits from the DbContext. Basically, it's the class provided by the entity framework code that allows all the communication between your app and the database. All the properties here of type DbSet that represent the table we are going to have in the database. And here we have the constructor. The constructor takes as a parameter the DbContext options, which will be injected when in the startup.cs when we create the ASP.NET Core project. And here we have onModel creating that allows us to control the database and tables as well. We use something called the Fluent UI, which is basically, let's say, the syntax of just about speaking with the code. Like, the entity user profile has many events with those events related with one per user profile, and on delete, just do nothing. Basically, it's a very powerful way to type your code and provide your APIs to the developers. It's not only Fluent API for entity framework and using it here and controlling the database. It's a way of typing the code, and it's very like a great pattern. So what we have done here is we have said or managed all the one-to-many relationships to be when we delete the main object to not take any action after the delete process. So in this case, we have managed that for all the properties. Like for the events and user profiles, don't remove the events when you remove a user profile, and the same thing for the user profile and wish list. So in this case, we avoid any delete by mistake that lead to a data loss. And another thing is to manage the structure of the database, because here, if you have a look, what's gonna happen if we remove a user profile? So the wish list also should be removed, and the wish list at the same time is related to an event. and in the same time the event is related to user profile. So yeah, it's going to be a little messy. So basically we should do just no action, and we can manage the delete process from our side. When the user wants to delete user profile, we can go make all the checks and delete all the related data. So that's going to be everything for this session. The last step of the database is to create it, apply the migration and to create it. But basically, because of the flow of this course, then the upcoming step is going to be the authentication. Then we will be back to the database, and that's because only one thing. Here I have created only the models project. Creating the ASP.NET Core project to put the database and move on is we have to initialize the authentication with creating the ASP.NET Core project, because we will use the built-in template of the authentication with Azure Active Directory P2C. So first we should prepare the applications in Azure and everything from the Azure side. Then we can create the new project and provide all the required info to initialize the project with a built-in authentication. This is going to save a lot of time, and basically this is what you are going to do in your upcoming projects. So the next step is going to be the authentication. We will be done from it. After we implement the authentication, it's not going to be that hard, but yeah, it's mandatory to create the application, the ASP.NET Core and the Blazor one. After we are done from them, we can get back, create the database, and complete with the normal flow. So thank you so much for watching, and if you are liking and enjoying this course, don't forget to show your support by a subscribe, comment, and a like. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.